Today on the Topping Show, Tucker Carlson's first Twitter episode hits 140 million views in one day. Bud Light is no longer America's #1 beer. Two Alabama-based companies reached the Fortune 500. Google partners with the Mayo Clinic. Salesforce to pay employees to come back to work. GameStop fires CEO. And Little Mermaid suffers death by a six-pack ring holder. A box office flop. All that and much, much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of the Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner and need a little assistance, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Other interesting cultural news, you have Bud Light no longer America's #1 beer. All because they chose a spokesperson who has an average audience age of 15 years old. And that person, as we all know, is Dylan Mulvaney, posted, I believe, 2 pictures and a video with the product. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but in this case, it's worth about $26 billion in lost market revenue for their stock, and of course, subsequent loss of sales. Now, specifically, Modelo is now #1. Now, some people are criticizing it, saying Modelo is owned by InBev. The U.S. entity is not. Very interesting nuance. So, AnheuserBusch InBev, which is a new, well, I was just saying new, a couple years ago, you have European-based InBev buying out American-based Anheuser-Busch, creating the new company InBev. Anheuser-Busch InBev, AB InBev. Now, they owned a bulk of Modelo's special makers. They actually owned the parent company, which is Grupo Modelo, in 2013. But in order for the United States regulators to allow the merging of Anheuser-Busch and InBev, they said that the company would have to spin off the U.S. entity of Modelo. The U.S. Modelo brand was spun off to Constellation brands in that bid. So some people are saying it's still the same company. In the United States, it is not. And these sales figures are for the United States. So they have literally destroyed their brand for that particular product. I know they have a large portfolio. In about 2 months, that's all it took. And 3 pictures. And the cultural pushback was so unprecedented hard. Many are thinking the brand will never recover. Subsequently, in terms of my anecdotal experience over in the great land of Texas, I've actually taken a Sharpie mark, and I am a rebel without a cause. I actually put a dot and a date on the cases of Bud Light when I go weekly for my groceries. And I couldn't help but notice week after, it was about 2 weeks in a row, is the same box is still there, which is the biggest loser in terms of retail product moving. The most valuable land on the planet, some joke in retail, is Walmart, because they have the foot traffic to demand premium prices from all the vendors. They get the best discounts, and they need to push products, because again, McDonald's model, they make a little bit of money over a large amount of resources, a large amount of sales. The quantity and the aggregate make a good profit to grow, sustain the company. Now, specifically talking about Modelo and the numbers now, their store sales for Modelo topped $333 million in the past 4 weeks ending May 28th. That is 15.6% increase compared to the same time last year. On the contrast, Bud Light, over the same time period this year, their sales are $297 million. So they've been knocked off the top. That's still a lot of sales. I wish my IT company had that sales. Someday we will. But it's going to just decrease more and more. The question is, when will it bottom out? I don't know. We'll see if it will. In my experience the past 2 months, I've seen one person purchase a case of Bud Light. And the person did get some funny looks at the gas station, but that's the one time I've seen someone lift up a case of Bud Light. And I did politely ask them, like, did they know about the controversy? And it turns out the person knew about the general controversy, but they didn't know that the average user of Dylan's user base was 15 years old. That was a little bit of a shocker to that individual. And I asked the gas station rep, like, what do you see these moving the most? And he told me that in terms of brands of beer, that was the slowest one. Again, one gas station location for that conversation of a manager at a gas station. I'll keep it unnamed so they don't get any trouble with their distributors or Bud Light. But it is interesting to see all this anecdotal evidence start to add up. Now, interestingly enough, Dylan Mulvaney doesn't care that Dylan destroyed the brand. Specifically, when during the interview, Dylan said, "I prefer not to name any of those people because it gives them the satisfaction of believing they're on my mind, and it shows my followers that I'm standing for myself, but also pushes that narrative is loud to matter." When asked about, unquote, when asked about how do you feel that Bud Light's bleeding revenue. And interestingly enough, since then, Dylan has not done any ad reads on TikTok, which is how Dylan makes a lot of the income. You pitch a product and people buy it. Dylan's broken FTC law actually by selling items on TikTok and not marking them as ads. There's a reason every one of these videos I have to click that disclaimer saying that there's promotion in this video, because my tech company helps support this, because otherwise it can be a complete fiscal loss. The tech company helps offset the cost of the videos, production, all that, via advertising. And the FTC has ruled if you're advertising a product, you have to clearly have it labeled. And so it takes less than a second to click that checkbox. By the way, if you need any IT help or sales at toppingtechnologies.com. Now, Dylan expanded saying, "I don't regret any of the thing I posted, but I want to make sure my transition is for me." It's kind of like redefining a relationship. When it gets too personal or hands-on, it can be hard to scale back, unquote. Now, this is from the person who quite literally documented everything that they've done for over a year as those viral videos. Again, it was every video just day 1, day 3, day 4 of being a woman. That's how Dylan rose to fame and become, I believe, over 11 million followers on the TikTok. It was a social, cultural phenomenon. But it's interesting to see some of these brands starting to distance themselves from the controversy of advertising towards kids, especially products like alcohol, where, again, in the United States, if you're 15, you cannot buy a beer. It would, even if you're 21, it wouldn't be recommended by Bud Light unless you don't have taste buds. Nevertheless, it's one of those things where it's against the law to actually buy those products as a child. So logically, I don't know why a brand would advertise to someone who's, again, average age demographic is someone who cannot buy the product. Fascinating business decision. We'll see how far they drop down in sales overall as time goes on. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It greatly helps out the channel. Also, really appreciate the feedback. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone to stay safe and fight the good fight.